Hi everyone, welcome to the Sew Essential vlog. I'm Lucy and I'm here today to show you how to shorten a pair of jeans. I'm going to show you two methods today. The first one is the traditional method whereby you cut off the excess fabric and you stitch it back into place. But even if you're an experienced sewer, I've got some real top tips here to share with you that you may well find handy. The second method is the cheats method, which keeps the original hem intact and is particularly useful if you're shortening a child's trousers where you want it to be a temporary measure because they're going to grow, or if you just want to do an adult's pair of trousers but very quickly with minimal fuss. All of the tools and gadgets I talk about today are available on our lovely website, and you'll find the link to our website below, and I'll also put individual links to the products below as well. So let's get started with the tutorial. So the first thing we need to do is to pin up the jeans using some pins to the level that we want the new hem to be, and then we're going to have to mark where we want to cut the excess fabric off. So I've got a range of tools here that I just want to run through with you. I'm going to use a sewing gauge, which is this handy little metal tool with a slider on it, which helps me to accurately mark different distances on fabric, but you could just use a standard issue tape measure as well. And then I'm going to use a Chaco pen because I just like these because they've got this little roller on the end and they give me real accuracy, but you could easily use tailor's chalk as well. You'll use the pins, as I said, just to pin the jeans up to the level that you actually want them, where you want the hem to finish. And then you'll need some decent dressmaking scissors if possible to cut off the excess fabric as well. So let's just put those to one side and I'll just show you that the jeans are here. So we've got the original hem here, but then on this leg we've tried them on and we've pinned them where we want the new hem to be. So if I show you inside, actually that's quite a significant reduction of length on this pair of jeans that we're going to make, but they've just tried them on and we've pinned them in place where they're happy with that hem finishing. So now what I need to do is I need to cut some of that excess off and just measure and mark everything before I take it over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to turn that inside out and I'm going to work from the bottom of the jeans. Because you know this edge is straight, you might not have pinned them accurately, they might not be perfectly straight where you've pinned them, but you know that this edge is straight. So we're going to work from the bottom of that edge, and what we've got to consider is that where you want the new hem to finish, obviously you need some fabric on the inside of the jeans to turn over and to stitch down. You don't want to cut them off where you want them to finish because you'd have just a frayed edge then. So you need to allow a little bit of what we call seam allowance, which will be what sits inside like this and is stitched down. So for these jeans I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but then I'm going to allow an additional 1/4 inch just to press under as well, so that I get that nice finished edge there. So if I want to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance and then I want a 1/4 inch to press under, that equals 3/4 inch. So I'm going to take my seam guide here, I'm going to slide it down to 3/4 inch, and then I'm going to mark that onto the fabric there. So this is, I know here, this amount of fabric here is what I want to leave intact. I don't want to cut off here. As I said, I want to cut off here. Now for accuracy I could go around and measure that all the way around from where I've pinned them, but as I said, if you haven't pinned them accurately you could end up with wonky hems then, whereas we know this edge is nice and accurate. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to slide my gauge, and I can see I'm going to use centimetres for this bit. You could use inches, but I can see that where I want that edge to be is 4.5 centimetres from the finished edge of the current finished edge of the jeans. So I can just go round and mark that all the way around, and then I can repeat this on the other leg as well because I know I want the jeans to be the same length for each leg, and I'm just making little chalk marks just periodically along the fabric, because when I cut that, then I know my blades will just line those up. But you can see we haven't quite pinned it accurately. It is a bit skew-if there, so it's definitely the best policy to go from this edge of the fabric, and also probably, if you have pinned them a bit skew-if, to go from the edge that's a little bit that's going to take a little bit less fabric off, because then you don't run the risk of them being too short, and you can always alter them a little bit afterwards if you need to. So I'm just going to repeat that all the way around and then do it on the other leg as well. And then on this one, it's nice and easy. I don't need to pin it up or anything. I can just work 4.5 centimetres from the finished edge. So I'm just going to measure and mark that all the way around on this leg as well. So we've marked where we want the fabric to be reduced to, and now we're going to unpin where they've been pinned up, remove those pins, and then we're going to cut the fabric. So I'm just taking those pins out now, and then this is where we want to cut the fabric. We've got this nice level hem marked up. You can see that it's running the same all the way around, so you know that they're going to be the same length, but it's all going to be nice and accurate, and you can just double check that if you need to. Just make sure you're happy with your markings and that that's all going to work. So here we go, we're going to snip through the fabric now and just take that excess fabric off, and do the same on the other side. And this is where your proper dressmaking shears or scissors will come in really handy, because they will cut the fabric so much better than anything else you could use. So we've cut that excess off there, sorry about that bang, and now we're ready to press the end under 1/4 inch, and then we're going to press it under again, and then we're just going to top stitch that down. But I've got some really good tips for you for getting through this thickness of fabric on your sewing machine, which can be quite difficult to do. Okay, so now we're going to press the hem up. So on my ironing board here, I've got the trousers or the jeans where we've cut that excess fabric off, and I'm going to start by pressing the raw edge up 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to press it up 1/2 inch again, which is what we allowed for. So I can use my sewing gauge here again, it's quite handy for this task. Just set it at that 1/4 inch marking, and I can just check that accurately. I'm doing that. Again, you could use a tape measure for that task as well. So yeah, we're just going to press that up and do it all the way around the edge. I'm using a steam generator iron. They are much better than the standard domestic irons for tasks like this, and just for ironing generally, if I'm perfectly honest. They make it a lot quicker and easier to do, get through that horrible task that most of us don't enjoy. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on doing that all the way around. So there we go, that's 1/4 inch again. Because accuracy is key here, because obviously, you know, you want your jeans to be nice and level. I'm actually doing this for someone else, so I always feel the pressure a little bit more when it's for somebody else and not for myself. But yeah, let's just keep measuring that, making sure it's nice and accurate. The nice thing about denim is it can take a lot of heat and a lot of steam as well, and it needs it as well to sit nicely. That nearly all the way around now. So that's it, that initial measurement pressed up. Let's just give it a bit more because, as I say, denim is a hard wearing, durable fabric, which is why we love it so much. But it does need to be managed into submission sometimes, and this goes for the sewing as well, but I'm going to, as I say, give you some great tips on that when we get to that stage, how to keep it under control and make sure it does what you want it to. And those little corner bits there where it's a bit more bulky, they're a bit more problematic, but if you just line everything up that you've already pressed and then give it a press from the top, that will help that to behave and sit down and do what it's supposed to. And then we're going to go ahead and press 1/2 inch up now as well to get that finished edge. Then we've pressed that raw edge under, so that will sit inside now when we stitch that down, and we're going to press 1/2 inch up now, and that's the measurement that we allowed for when we originally marked the jeans. So you can see I've got 1/2 inch now set on my sliding sewing gauge, and I'm just going to press that down in place. Okay, so there you can see that you won't have a raw edge inside now. It's all neatly pressed, it all lines up nice and accurately. So we'll just repeat that on the other leg and then head over to the sewing machine. So we're going to start sewing the jeans now, the hemmer, but I just want to show you the tools I'm using. I'm using a jeans needle in a large size, 110 or 18, and that's because these needles are designed to sew through denim and thick heavy fabrics, and that's what you're going to need for this task. It's imperative that you use the right needles. We stock a wide range of these on our website, and everything else I'm going to show you, you can find the links to our website below. I'm also going to use top stitching thread, which will give it a really professional finish and make it look like they were done in they were shop bought. This comes in a range of colours. I'm using this in the needle, but I'm not using it in the bobbin. I'm using standard thread in the bobbin, because if you try and use top stitch thread in the needle and the bobbin, it can just be a bit much for a domestic sewing machine to work with. So I'm just using that in the needle. And then you'll also see me use this little fella, which is known as a humper jumper or a bulky seam aid. And that's going to help us get over that really bulky seam where the side seam is. It's going to help us get across that, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to start on the back leg of the jeans towards the side seam, but not right on the side seam, because that is where you will run into your difficulties. So you don't really want to be starting there. You want to get going first and then worry about that when you get to that point. I'm using a seam guide foot here, which is, it just tells me markings where my seam allowances are. I just find that easier, but obviously you could just use a standard foot and use the markings on your needle plate. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, which should catch the 1/4 inch that I've pressed up on the fabric. Now you might want to play it a bit safer and perhaps sew a slightly narrower seam, but you've got to remember you want to catch that fabric that you've pressed up underneath. So we're going to do a back stitch to start and then sew all the way around the hem. So you may have noticed that I've removed the accessory tray off the arm of my sewing machine here, so that I've been able to slip the leg of the jeans over the arm. And if you've got that option on your machine, it just makes things a little bit easier. I'm sewing with a half inch seam. I think I said a 1/4 of an inch before. It's a 1/2 inch, so that it will catch everything that I've pressed up inside. And we're just approaching that bulky seam now, so this is where we're going to start using the bulky seam aid. So as we approach that, I'm just going to sew a bit closer. As you can see, I've got the leg of the jeans over the arm of the machine, and then as I get closer to there, I'm going to get my bulky seam aid, and you can see as the front of the foot goes over the bulky seam, the back of the foot's got nothing to work against. So if I push the bulky seam aid underneath, it just gives the back of the foot something to work against. And then the front of the fabric might get caught on the front of the foot here as well. So yeah, that's happened there. Let's just push that underneath and use the bulky seam aid to just work my way across that seam. And you can see I would have had no chance of getting over that without that tool, but it just works really, really well. You might need to put your needle in the down position while you're manoeuvring things as well. That's quite a useful tip. And then we'll just keep sewing in the usual way across the rest of the hem with that 1/2 inch seam allowance. Just keep going. And just keep manoeuvring everything as you go along, keeping everything nice and flat. And stitch right to the end. And then of course we're going to come to another bulky seam here. We're hitting the other side seam now. So you're going through several layers of denim, which is asking a lot of a sewing machine, well, a domestic sewing machine. And that's where this bulky seam aid comes in. Just slide it right under the back of the foot again. I've got my needle down again. Just manoeuvre that bit of fabric at the front under, and I've stitched through it, no problem. And then just keep going until you connect up to your previous line of stitching, your original line of stitching, and reverse at the end to secure everything. Cut your threads, and you can see we've got a nice even hem there all the way round. So I'm going to repeat exactly the same step on the other side, but I just wanted to say here, if you find that your machine is struggling with this level of thickness of the fabric, there is an alternative. You could, instead of pressing the fabric under and under again, you could sew a zigzag or an overcasting stitch along the initial raw edge and then just press the fabric up and stitch that down in place, so that you wouldn't have this folded edge, but that the raw edge of the fabric would be finished with a zigzag or an overcasting or overlocker stitch, and that will reduce the amount of bulk that you've got to go through and is just a nice easy alternative method. Now, I said I'd show you two methods for shortening a pair of jeans, and this is a great method for children's clothes. It's a bit of a cheats method where you're able to leave the hem intact, and also it's great for children's clothes because you can make it a temporary measure if you want to, and then unpick it and give them that length back again. So I've got an old pair of my son's jeans here. Now, if you wanted to reduce the length by an inch, for example, what you would need to do is fold the jean trousers back on themselves, but you would want to measure half an inch from the bottom. You'd want it to measure half an inch from where you folded it up to the original hem, because that will take off 1 inch off the length in total, because you've got half an inch on this side and then you've got half an inch on that side, so you're shortening them in total by 1 inch. Now all you would do is pin that in place where you want it and do that all the way around again, so measuring half an inch up. So this is going to shorten the trousers by 1 inch in total for them. And you would just carry on, do that all the way around and on the other leg as well. Okay, so much quicker and easier when you're working with children's jeans. There's a lot less length to go around, but you can see I've pinned those up there. And then we'll just take these over to the sewing machine, and you're just going to stitch along the edge of the original hem there. But I'll show you how to do that on the sewing machine. Okay, so now we're going to show you the cheats method. So I'm going to be using the same jeans needle. I'm using a normal sewing machine thread for this one though, rather than the top stitching thread, and I'll probably need to use the humper jumper. But also it's worth mentioning I can't fit the end of the leg over here, and you might not be able to do that depending on the sewing machine you've got. You might not even be able to do it with the adults jeans, and in which case you just need to manoeuvre the fabric so that you can get it under the foot, and just make sure you're not catching the other side of the trousers. So it is particularly fiddly doing it with children's trousers, but you want that needle to come down. You can just use your hand wheel and just turn it to make sure it's coming down next to where that original hem is sitting, and then we're going to do a back stitch to secure and sew all the way round. Now, I do apologise here, my hands are probably a little bit in the way at times when I'm sewing, because it's quite difficult manoeuvring these very small children's jeans and getting them into the correct position so I'm stitching in the right place. But as we go round the leg of the jean, you'll see where the needle is hitting. It's hitting literally just next to where that original hem finishes. So I'm stitching alongside that all the way around. And you will have to stop and re-manoeuvre more frequently on such a small hem. It's kind of like doing a sleeve hem on an adult piece of clothing, but you can see here when I'm manoeuvring where that needle is. And I do apologise about my hand obstructing the view a little bit, but I am having to manoeuvre the fabric from both ends just to make sure that everything's going through. And also you've got to be really careful that you're not catching the other side. That's a really easy mistake to make when you're working with such a small area, it's very easy, it would be very easy for me to catch the other side, so that's why I'm using both hands to sort of make sure that I'm not doing that. And as I hit the bulky seam again, I'm just going to use that bulky seam aid to manoeuvre over that area. Not going through quite as many layers of denim this time on this jean because we haven't turned it up in the same way. So it's not quite as difficult as it was before, but I still need that to help me through those areas. And again, still using the jeans needle and just watching that I don't catch that other side of the jeans as I stitch and go all the way around, just manoeuvring everything again. So you can see there, I'm just stitching right next to the finished edge of the hem. And it is a lot more fiddly than working with the big clothes. The seams are shorter, but they're definitely more fiddly to work with on children's clothes. But as I say, this is the same as if you were sewing a hem on a sleeve, you know, it's that sort of distance, isn't it? Okay, so we've stitched all the way round there, and then if we turn the jeans down like so, you've actually kept that original hem, but you've shortened them. You can just give that a good press now. I've gone a bit skew-iff there. I'm doing this at a difficult angle to get perfectly where I wanted to. But yeah, you can just turn that down, give it a good press, and you've got your new hem there, which looks lovely and neat. Is nice and even all the way around. And then inside you can either leave that excess fabric in place so that if your child grows you can then unpick that and lengthen the jeans down again, or if you were doing it on adult jeans and you knew you weren't going to need to increase that length again, you could just do a zigzag stitch and trim off the excess fabric, or you could overlock along the edge there just to finish them off. But how great is that for a short-term solution for children's clothes? You've got that lovely neat hem there, and then when the time comes and they grow again, inevitably you can unpick it and lengthen those jeans again. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you've got the confidence now to go forth and shorten those jeans. As I mentioned at the start, everything I talk about today is available on our website. You'll find the link to our website below. And if you like what you see today, please like and subscribe, and we'll bring you a new video every Friday.